Well, good evening. I'm Kip Knight. I'm the president of Wyoming Seminary, and we are proud to host this panel discussion tonight. Our mission as a school fits this topic perfectly. And briefly, our mission as Wyoming Seminary is, within an exponentially changing world, Wyoming Seminary dares to teach its students to honor and strive for the true, the beautiful, and the good. Tonight, as always, for society, we seek to find the right balance of truth, of beauty, and of goodness or morality to solve the very complex problems that we face in our world today. And they only get more complex every time. So our purpose tonight here is to bring together local professionals to provide a variety and depth of perspectives and breadth of perspectives on the complex issue of Marcellus Shale natural gas exploration and production. So our format tonight, how we're going to do this. This is not an audience participation format, okay? I will ask the questions, and the panelists already have the questions, and I will ask one of our panelists then to respond to the questions. So we've carefully considered the questions in advance, and we've made them available to the panelists. And selected panelists, because we cover a wide range of areas here, will respond to the question. And they'll have a fixed amount of time, which I'll control, for every question that I direct their way. So the question of whether and how to exploit the resources of our planet, particularly the energy resources, is a fundamental question for all societies. We want you, the public, to hear a variety of perspectives on this issue. There is no simple answer because these are very complex issues. By listening, we hope you can make up your own mind and provide informed support for these issues. The panel members have agreed to talk to you, by the way, individually after our discussion tonight, and we will conclude by 8:30. I've got to get students back to school, so that's why we'll do it by 8:30. On behalf of myself and everyone here tonight, I want to thank Mrs. Rachel Bartron, the director at Wyoming Seminary of the Marcellus School of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics, for organizing tonight's program. I know this became a labor of love for Rachel, and this came about from a presentation that was made as part of our STEM series last October. Our panelists tonight, just to give you an idea, we have 10. They include this: 2 representing the natural gas industry. 3 are policymakers in local and state government. 1 is from a state regulating agency. 3 are experts in science, environment, and ethics from local universities. And the 10th is a geologist and environmental consultant. Now, as I introduce each of the panel members here, I will ask them for a 20 to 30-second response to the question, what is the one thing you believe the public needs to know about natural gas drilling? And I'm going to do this in alphabetical order, so I'll start here immediately to my left with Councilwoman Eileen Cipriani, who is president of the West Wyoming Borough Council. Eileen?
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me here tonight. Good evening. Okay, good evening. Can you hear me without the microphone? Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. As you said, I'm the council president in the municipality of West Wyoming. But I'm not here tonight to represent West Wyoming. I'm here to speak more of the local perspective via my experience as an elected official and as a resident. What I would like most to get people to think about is you need to ask questions. You need to get engaged. There's a lot of issues and a lot of points of view about the natural gas industry, both positive and negative. But there are real concerns that need to be addressed. Potential health issues, safety issues, and the potential long-lasting effects on our environment. Just recently there was an event at the PBR Partners dehydration facility, and that spurred talk of a reverse 911 system. My thought is that that's a great idea, but if people were engaged in looking at solutions, maybe we would find the solutions before we actually have the problems. So, thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. I appreciate that. Next is Colleen Connolly, who is a spokesperson, regional spokesperson for the Pennsylvania State Department of Environmental Protection. Colleen.
Thank you. I just wanted people to know that as far as gas well drilling and natural gas compressor stations, that the gas drilling industry in Pennsylvania is subjected to some of the toughest regulations in the country. DEP follows EPA standards and DEP regulations as far as well encasings going. When we have complaints, we respond to each and every complaint we receive at the Department of Environmental Protection, whether it's an odor or a spill, we go out and we look into it. I agree with my counterpart, Eileen Cipriani. It takes communities to get involved, and DEP wants to hear from you. If you have a complaint, a concern, we take them very seriously. But we do subject them to serious regulations, self-monitoring, self-reporting, and we do respond to each and every complaint when we get it, and we look for cooperation from the gas companies, the drilling companies, and the residents of Northeast Pennsylvania when trying to determine if there's an issue that the DEP needs to get involved with as well as gas drilling. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Our third panelist is William DeRosiers, who's from Media Relations, the Cabot Oil and Gas Corporation, and I'll ask you to respond to what's the one thing you believe the public needs to know about natural gas drilling.
Well, I'd like to build on what Colleen just said. The industry here in Pennsylvania takes everything from the environment to the overall production of these wells for the next 50, 60 years very serious. So we belong to a group called the Marcellus Shale Coalition, many of the operators here. And we actually self-police ourselves, and we set standards that are above and beyond many of the standards required to us by state and federal laws. And we're very proud that we've been able to implement these different standards, whether it be lining our pad sites with a particular material or recycling 100% of all of our fluids here in the Northeast. So these are just some of the things I hope to have more of an opportunity to discuss with you tonight or afterwards or in future meetings.
Thank you. Next is Kenneth Klimo, biology professor and director of the Institute on Energy and the Environment at Wilkes University. Ken?
All right, thank you very much. And again, I thank you for having me on this panel. Probably the one thing that, from where I sit as director of a science institute on shale gas development, investigating shale gas development, is that certainly there are a lot of questions out there about many factors, many facets of potential impacts on shale gas. And this is something I'm sure will be covered this evening. I think the one thing that everybody should know is that a lot of the questions that we have are amenable to being resolved by good science. It takes time, but the science can be done to resolve these issues. The one concern, though, is that there's nowhere near enough financial support for those of us who want to do the science to be able to do the science that we want to do. And so that's one of the things I think that's missing from the discussion is, why don't we support more good science?
Thank you. Next panelist is Pennsylvania State Representative Sandra Major. Sandra is a Republican representing Susquehanna, Wayne, and Wyoming counties.
Thank you, Doctor, and indeed my sincere thanks to Mrs. Bartron and also the Lewis Maslow STEM School for hosting this seminar tonight. Certainly, I gave a lot of thought to this question because there is so much that the public needs to know about the drilling of Marcellus Shale for natural gas. First of all, Marcellus Shale lies underneath about 2/3 of Pennsylvania and about 5,000 to 8,000 feet deep. We know geologists and scientists, after much study, have told us that there are trillions of cubic feet of natural gas in that Marcellus Shale. My constituents have told me, many of them, that their grandparents or their great-grandparents signed gas leases as long ago as 40 to 50 years. And because we did not have the technology whereby to drill that gas, nor was it was indeed cost prohibitive, that gas was not drilled. Hundreds of thousands of gas wells have been drilled in Pennsylvania since the first gas well was drilled back in 1859 in Titusville. And certainly, we know that DEP and state regulations have been in place since 1956. So as we work tonight to answer questions, to have a discussion, I look forward to working with my colleagues here to hopefully address some of the issues and certainly make the public aware and understand much about the Marcellus Shale natural gas drilling. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Next panelist is Pennsylvania State Representative Phyllis Mundy, a Democrat representing Luzerne County. Phyllis?
Good evening and welcome to my legislative district. What I think that people should know about Marcellus Shale gas drilling in Pennsylvania is that your state government has not and is not doing all that we can to protect the environment and public health and safety. And I believe that the Marcellus Shale industry and its drilling has far outpaced state and federal law and regulations, our scientific knowledge and understanding of the impacts both short and long term. So I hope that we will be able to get into some of the reasons why I feel that way. 30 seconds really doesn't give me much time to dig deep.
Thank you, Phyllis. Our next panelist is Brian Oren, who is a professional geologist and a consultant with BF Environmental Consultants. Brian?
Hello, everybody. I'm going to take a little different spin. I think the thing we need to know about natural gas drilling is that it's another form of energy. And the people, all of us in this room are the consumers of that energy. And we all have the ability to make a choice on how we might want to change our lives or live our lives. And if we want to sign a lease or don't sign a lease, or make a change and use less energy. Again, our country, we waste, of all the energy we produce, we waste 54% of that energy. So, of the 40%, 7% that's left, that's the energy we actually rely on. But over half of it goes to waste. If you want to make a difference, conserve. That's a big start. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Bernard Prusa, Director of the McGowan Center for Ethics and Social Responsibility at King's College.
I thought we had 3 to 5 minutes. 30 seconds?
This is just the opening. This is the opening.
Brief, too. I've got 5 minutes prepared. Did I take 5 minutes? So many people haven't spoken very long, so thank you for inviting me. The question for me was, what's the special contribution of a moral philosopher or an ethicist, which I am, to this discussion? What's the one thing that somebody like me has to say as a professional to the public? And that, I think, is this, that in conditions of uncertainty, when a course of action poses a moral risk, that's to say a risk to morally important interests, first, there are special demands on the would-be actors to try to dispel the uncertainty. And second, if some uncertainty remains, there are criteria that need to be met before the action in question should be permitted. So, I'm not certain whether fracking does or does not satisfy these criteria, but I want to use my little bit of time to speak to these special demands on would-be actors, and also to indicate what these criteria are that need to be met before an action, such as perhaps fracking, could be considered morally permissible. So briefly, this isn't about fracking immediately, briefly take 2 simple cases, which I've taken from a philosopher at Penn named Alexander Carrera. There is in town a rundown house that appears to be abandoned. So Jack, case 1, is a census worker trying to determine whether there is anyone living in the house before he submits his count. Jill, case 2, is a construction worker trying to determine whether there is anyone living in the house before she demolishes it. Jill has greater so-called epistemic obligations than Jack does, which is to say obligations to get things right. In other words, she has to do more investigating than he does before she has an actionable claim to know that there is no one living in the house. If he gets it wrong, there's not all that much in the balance. If she gets it wrong, there's a lot in the balance. The reason is that the action that her belief will be used to justify is quite morally serious because significant harm or even death is at stake. The question here that's relevant to fracking is whether, and it's a question, I'm not saying I've got the answer to it, this is a question that has an emphasis that can help to clarify. The question that's relevant to fracking is whether the gas companies and our government have done enough and have sufficient evidence to rule out the risks to health, human health and the environment that, if they obtained, should block fracking. Now, second case. Let's say that Jill undertakes a thorough and careful investigation, but some uncertainty remains. That is, she still does not know with certainty that her action poses no morally significant risks. When could she be permitted to proceed? The answer is that she would need reason to believe that there are considerations of substantial moral significance compelling her to action. In brief, she would need morality on her side. Otherwise, she can't justify running the risk of significant harm or death. So and I'm almost finished. I haven't seen the red card quite yet, or even the yellow card. I want to draw out the 3 criteria that need to be met. We're talking about how could you justify action in cases of uncertainty. So first I talked about the special demands on would-be actors when there is uncertainty. You've got a very high threshold that you need to meet in order to try to dispel that uncertainty. Let's say that some uncertainty remains. What are the criteria that would permit you going ahead with the action in question? All right? So there are 3 criteria. First, the considerations must be moral, meaning concern with prevention of harm or death, the protection of rights, or the advancement of human well-being. And saving or making money would not count here. So Jill can't justify demolishing the house because it would save some money for the construction company, obviously, because she can't run that risk. She's got to have some moral consideration on her side. Second, these moral considerations must be substantial, meaning of great importance. The prevention of minor harms or harms that could be averted in some other way would not count here. And third, these substantial moral considerations must be compelling, meaning making it appear necessary for her to go ahead with the action that she has in mind. So she's got to have moral considerations on her side. She's acting in a case of uncertainty. They've got to be substantial moral considerations. And finally, they have to be found compelling. The second question relevant to fracking then is whether, if uncertainty remains, and I'm not speaking to whether it does or does not, over its risks, there are in its support considerations of substantial moral significance that the public should find compelling.
Thank you. We are going to have time for longer responses. This is really just an introduction. But thank you. I appreciate that. Next panelist is Rory Sweeney with Media Relations from the Chesapeake Energy Corporation. Rory?
Hello, everyone. It's working. And I'll stick to the original introduction here. And the question, if I remember, is what's the most important thing that you should take away from this? And from my standpoint, it's a homegrown resource. This is something that is produced here in Pennsylvania by Pennsylvanians for Pennsylvanians. It is a world-class gas field right within hours of one of the largest gas consumption markets in the world. It's under world-class oversight, some of the best in the country. And we all know from gasoline prices that transportation has costs. It costs money, it costs energy, it can waste energy. When we have a product this prolific, this close to the market, we're saving all of ourselves a lot of money and a lot of energy. I have an environmental background, and having talked to a lot of people, you always hear we want to think globally but act locally. People will go to their local farmers markets for food, and they want to buy local products. But we should also be thinking that same way when it comes to our energy choices. And the Marcellus Shale being right here in our communities is the #1 choice for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rory.